Welcome.
The Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community is a regulatory science initiative that aims to facilitate innovations in pathology, as well as advance safety and effectiveness evaluation. The PI Collaborative Community aims to harmonize approaches to speed delivery to patients through collaboration in the pre-competitive space. The PI-CC is open to all stakeholders, public or private, including but not limited to academia, industry, healthcare providers, patients, and advocacy groups. Meetings of this kind are an example of lawful activity under federal antitrust law, because the focus of the meeting is on government action or policy, including the industry's responses or positions taken with respect thereto. However, antitrust monitoring is needed for companies' own protection, since they are direct competitors meeting together. These meetings need to stay within protected subject matters and need to be monitored so that they do not stray off into inappropriate areas, such as pricing and price terms, sales and service territories for particular products, customers and customer territories, each company's individual decisions regarding selection of suppliers or customers, marketing plans and especially future marketing plans or new product offerings, other proprietary or competitively sensitive information. Today's meeting will follow the written agenda, and there will be no discussion of pricing or other prohibited topics. If the discussion veers into those topics, we will terminate the discussion. If you have any questions or concerns about the propriety of a discussion, please raise it immediately, and we will take a break to determine how best to proceed. The Medical Device Innovation Consortium acts as the formal convener, and we will follow their conflict of interest policy. For additional information, we defer to our Code of Conduct and our website, www.pathologyinnovationcc.org. We look forward to moving the field forward.
All right, welcome everyone. It's 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I hope everyone has a great start in the February, and we're here at the steering committee meeting from the Pathology Innovation Collaborative Community. See a lot of familiar faces. Thank you very much. We have basically a 3-part meeting today, a couple of updates, then 2 main discussion points, and then a couple more updates and some events. So let's get right into it. First section is always a couple of FDA updates. The first one was a recent CIRSE-related session organized by the University in Maryland, and a pointer again to the CIRSE workshops and training. That's a relatively comprehensive overview of various activities in the regulatory space, in this case, centers of excellence in regulatory science. And this particular virtual public workshop was notable for participation by several FDA CDER, so CIDR folks, including some from the School of Pharmacy, as well as Eric Topol and a couple of other excellent researchers tackling the topic of artificial intelligence and machine learning for precision medicine. Quick pointer, there's links that I believe are already on the website, where you can see recordings as well as many of the excellent talks. The next element, this is one of the examples, so big shout out to several of the FDA speakers that compiled, for example, the number of machine learning related submissions by year. And you can see 2022, while not as steep of an incline, had over, I think, 110 or so submissions in the AI ML space. And some of these examples indicated also biomarker as well as endpoint assessments for imaging-based biomarkers, which is, of course, of great interest to this group. So please take a look. The next couple of elements here are updates that are not specifically related to the biomarker and or imaging field, but definitely very interesting because these are summary documents. These are, of course, annual reports coming from different sectors of the agency. This is the Office of Clinical Pharmacology, which also participated in that previous CIRSE session that I mentioned. You will see there's great overlap between many of the aspects, and one, the Personalized Medicine Coalition has put together an overview, also sort of an annual review. In this case, they call it the Scope and Significance of Progress in 2022 report, just to give you some sort of like overview of what they look at and what this shows, which is that personalized medicine approval accounted for more than 25% of FDA approvals for each of the last 8 years. So while at first glance, some of these approvals are not quite related, overall, they make almost a quarter when it comes to the total numbers. So I thought it's an interesting statistics, plus there are many, many other data points in there. A couple of new guidances came out, one which we missed in the January meeting, so I definitely wanted to put this out here, which is related to some of the delays, denying, limiting, or refusing a drug or device inspection. So why are we looking at this? Number one is it is tied and related to some of the inspection guidances. You see there's a link, what should I expect during an inspection? And it is relevant because the different sections of compliance are touched in this one guidance, which is the first revision. It's still in draft. And it touches about bioresearch monitoring, of course, devices and radiologic health, but also drugs, foods, and cosmetics. So this is more or less related to compliance across the agency. So definitely an interesting guidance, and very intricate, very generic to a lot of different branches and sectors, but hence very relevant. The next annual report came from the Oncology Center of Excellence, so OCE. This is an annual report that mentions several of the topics we have previously discussed. I just want to point out a few and then focus on one, although they're all highly interesting. You see there's a diversity plan guidance. I think it's still in draft. It is led by the so-called Project Equity. There's a Project Pragmatica, which I get into in a second, and then several draft guidance documents on, for example, development of drugs for cancers defined by molecular alterations, aka the so-called Tissue Agnostic Development Program. As many of you know, this is a new, I wouldn't call it trend anymore. It's a new paradigm in drug approvals where these are tissue agnostic. And, you know, if you haven't seen that guidance document, the links are already on the website, but I wanted to focus on this Project Pragmatica, which is a specific approach to advance evidence generation in clinical trials with real-world routine clinical practice evidence. So we discussed this before. This, however, shapes into a very multidisciplinary team effort. And I wanted to point to this project because it really indicates that the OCE, so the Oncology Center for Excellence, is really trying to identify pathways to combine clinical trials, which have been criticized as highly stringent enrollment criteria that never really reflect clinical practice, and combining that with real world, you know, the heterogeneity in routine clinical practice. So as the project name implies, this seems to be a rather pragmatic approach, but please feel free to take a look. It's definitely a very interesting approach, and it is featured in the OCE's annual report. Next is an update of the CDRH Experiential Learning Program that has several overlaps with some of the documents I mentioned before. The website update is from early February, and there are 5 additional resources that surfaced. I believe they have been, some have been active before, but now they are consolidated. Training areas of interest is a big sub-branch with many, many different learning programs under that, but patient engagement, and again, the site visit format is part of this as well. Somewhat related, not FDA, but HHS is a report response to the executive order on lowering prescription drug costs. Of course, the question here is, why are we interested in that when it comes to devices? As you can see on the right, 3 sections here from the secretary are listed. One is, of course, the high value drug list. Of course, many of the oncology drugs that are fairly highly priced have companion diagnostic indications. There's cell and gene therapy access, which is, of course, a very pricey type that is under the focus of many, many different payers, of course, also CMS. And then the last one, the accelerating clinical evidence, I think matches very well with the previously outlined Project Pragmatica, where it is how to really get FDA-approved drugs aligned with the clinical evidence for CMS to identify what should and what should not be incentivized. So there's definitely additional overlap. 2 final things for the regulatory update. This is a part of an investigational drug part for phase 1 trials, which is called the Current Good Manufacturing Practice, or CGMP, that was recently discussed by several people. Someone emailed me a whole email string about whether current good manufacturing practice for phase 1 trial for investigational drugs should be accompanied any companion diagnostics component. And I just wanted to briefly feature it. If there's more interest on quality control and CGMP related to this, I'm happy to entertain this as part of a project in this community. So this is something I just wanted to point out here. And we shared this guidance document, which is older, but clearly indicates the outline of what the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and current good manufacturing practices have in common. One pointer to the European Medicines Agency. They released in early February questions and answers to clinical trials information systems, CTIS, and clinical trials regulations, CTR. And very specifically important here is a lot of references that are listed in here, which basically explain in very detail all the clinical trial as well as data capturing requirements under the EU paradigm. So it's a fantastic sort of meta resource that lists all or most of the relevant resources. Switching over to legislative updates, there's quite a few. First is from the White House. You may have seen the fact sheet. This is the 1-year anniversary of the reinitiated Cancer Moonshot, where the Biden-Harris administration announces certain actions. There were 6 mentioned in the fact sheet. Some of you know and are funded by some, NMQF, CancerX, just to name a few. We just wanted to mention this because I believe some of these initiatives will lead to additional funding through the usual funding routes at the government or national level. The next legislative update is related to biomarker testing. I believe at the end of 2022, we mentioned one initiative from Rhode Island, and you see several other legislative initiatives have been introduced or even passed. And here, the common theme is basically that health insurers will be required to cover cancer biomarker testing. As part of that, several national initiatives, among them the American Cancer Society and the so-called Cancer Action Network, have rallied many other prominent groups, as you can see here on the left, to create a shared incentive that is multiple legislative attempts to incentivize the coverage for the relevant biomarker tests for certain oncologic drugs. The focus here is, of course, that it has to be covered. This is a section of the Rhode Island law, and if you look Even one further, this is all supposed to go live in January 1, 2024. What's currently not really clear is whether all of these tests will have to have FDA authorization or approval, and or whether prior authorization will be part of these legislative attempts. Two other legislative updates quickly. As you know, the Ballot Act has been not included in the appropriations bill or omnibus bill at the end of 2022. However, there's clearly continued interest in especially high complexity, high risk testing. We wanted to point out to an interesting summary article by Jeannie Bauman and Celine Craston-Robo, who summarized the 2023 status. Two additional updates. One is a regulatory continued enforcement discretion by CMS. This here illustrates that some of the remote review exceptions will continue. We posted the CMS guidance document. So the quick summary is that CMS has previously exercised enforcement discretion for pathologists with the ability to review pathology slides remotely. The enforcement discretion is not contingent on the Public Health Emergency Authority, and CMS will continue exercise enforcement discretion that will allow pathologists to examine digital images and laboratory data at remote locations. Of course, details to follow, but a big shout out to many of you who have done lobbying in the same realm, just like we tried with PICC, CAP, DPA, Association for Pathology Informatics, ASCP, and everyone here. Now wanted to transition to a few discussion topics. So before opening this up for input and various, of course, opinions about this, quickly, first item is an in-person meeting. So PICC has to have an annual meeting. We have previously run a query, and most people who have responded said that they would be definitely positive for an in-person meeting. We have to decide where and when. There's a couple of suggestions. We previously had our last in-person meeting in 2019, November. That was in Arlington and kindly organized and supported by MDIC. You see in this overview slide that we had several pathology and non-pathology participants. Most notably, we had support from the FDA on the topic, of course, DPA, MDIC presented their unique focus. We had PCORI, the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. We had Friends of Cancer Research present some patient advocacy elements, and the American College of Radiology, in that case, Bib Allen, who spoke. And of course, the idea would be to repeat as a proposal a similarly scaled event in person to scope out the various interests. You see some of the groups here that have in the past, and I hope in the future, indicated interest in joining PICC. And the idea here would be to have a 3/4 day, maybe a full day event, ideally in a location near DC or near the DC area. In that event that we mentioned in November 2019, we had over 30 FDA participants. We would hope that that would be another venue to share some of our thoughts with similarly high numbers of FDA participants. And the idea would be, of course, to have about 8 groups present, but kind of unique to this proposal would be that the meeting would select one relevant, unifying, larger scale or big project that seems to resonate with many people or many of the groups. And then, of course, use part of that meeting time to co-develop a project map and deliverables. So this is the discussion topic 1. And I'm very happy to see that Victor Garcia and Ed Magirison from the FDA also are present, and wanted to maybe throw the first question to you, what you think about this idea. And yeah,
hi Joe,
good seeing you.
Yeah, we're very supportive. Let's go straight to the bottom line. I think it'd be great. I've done a bit of digging around. It's difficult for us to host it on campus, but as you all know, things are much easier if they're in the DC area. We can get people there and actually get all the expertise that might be relevant to make the meeting as productive as possible. I also love the idea, and you and I haven't discussed this, but I love the idea of having a really big meaty project that the whole collaborative community can try and contribute towards, because I think that's how we really kind of move the needle. I think the work that the community is doing is phenomenal. I think it's making lots of progress in lots of areas, but it'd be nice if we had one really good, I know you're a basketball fan, a good slam dunk. See, I'm learning this stuff slowly but surely. But if we had one really big wow moment, we can get a lot of PR and a lot of momentum out of that, and I think really build on that. So I'm really supportive. So we'll be very strong participants. We can't physically host it on campus. That's going to be too awkward. But what we could do is, if it's on, if whatever day it is, the day before or the day after, we could always host a visit and show people around if they want to come and see our place. And there's not many reviewers around, so you can't harangue them very easily. But my shop is pretty much fully open, particularly Wednesdays and Thursdays. So yeah, just a big thumbs up from me, Joe. And just let us know how we can help.
Well, I think the ability to come and see what the engineering division within the agency does sounds amazing to me. I mean, I know that will require a little bit of coordination, but I think it would be phenomenal, because, you know, science happens on the one and the other side of that virtual wall. So it would be really interesting to see what the imaging division looks like, and coupling that would be an amazing insight, even if the meeting itself couldn't be hosted, you know, at the agency at this time.
Yeah, we're just not, certainly through CDRH. I think the other product centers are moving at, well, we always all move at different rates, but we're not really hosting external meetings on campus at this point. Very few sponsor meetings even. So it's just making an exception would be difficult just now, maybe next year. But if there were a local, DC clearly is much easier, because most people can just hop on the metro and we can be there in greater force.
I certainly appreciate that vote of confidence, and, you know, I fully understand a big sized meeting plus great project would probably help everyone. I don't know, let's open it up to others as well. What do others think? I'm looking to MDIC, CAP, DPA. You know, we have so many different representatives on the call.
Take silence as agreement, Joe. That's always the way to go.
I see James Harrison gets a thumbs up. So, you know, it's there's no vicious no coming. That's a good thing. No, I think, you know, we pasted a couple.
We need it, actually. I don't think it's a nice to have at this point. I think we've done phenomenally well in the last 3 years. I think it would help galvanize us and build up further some of the working relationships that we really need across the community, would be my feeling.
I can probably take it also to, you know, Jitesh and Noor from MDIC, because they harness a lot of the shared opinions around the device manufacturers to make sure that we also have broad buy-in from that community. So maybe leverage that. And then, of course, with CAP, ASCP, and DPA, we should capture most of the digital pathology community, I hope. You see there's a few calendar screenshots. There are quite a few meetings that have digital pathology as part and or parcel of their unique focus. So we thought initially of like a Friday or Monday to enable possibly, I don't know, maybe capturing some of the great cherry blossom time in DC, you know, and then have a meeting Friday or Monday afterwards or before. But timing is, of course, always critical. So we should definitely get that on the books and then maybe email it out to the large community. Other comments here? All right. Then discussion topic 2, which is urgently needed. And part of it is, if you have seen, we tried to maneuver a relatively challenging problem forward, and a big shout out to Ulla and team to try to post everything before the meeting so people can look over it. But it has reached a level of complexity that goes even beyond that. So you will see a bit later when we go over this, there's so many research studies, so many resources that we can't possibly go through in the steering committee. So we thought of, instead of posting these as long lists at each steering committee, go through the effort of sorting through this and really making it sort of a library or separate resources with certain themes around it, where the various researchers and interested parties can deposit things. So as a few themes that seem to be recurrent is, let's say, statistics, genotyping, or how to write papers. Some of these were solicited by people in various stages of their regulatory science journey. And these are just proposed themes. So as a discussion topic, instead of having, long lists of papers at each steering committee meeting, to really have folks who want to submit their paper, study, or resource, assign it to those themes and have that available on the website. So in case someone has an interest in, let's say, AI, machine learning, tissue-based biomarkers, or so, that there's a separate resource where you can find, A, of course, the papers, but B, the people who contributed them, who are part of the community, and try to create sort of a different type of resource here. What do folks think about this approach? Because I don't know what the total amount of in gigabytes it is that we currently host, but it has become very, very comprehensive. But yeah, what do folks think about this idea? Very quiet today. What's up? Victor, I saw you gave it a thumbs up.
I think it's a pretty good idea. How different would it be from your publication section that you already have on the website?
So we would, I mean, the publication section right now is mostly papers that have emerged from the community itself. But I think many colleagues here also use the platform to send their study aid to be featured, but also to share what they have discovered. But it's more or less all publications in one box. We're thinking more about parsing it out to say, this is something statistics resource or an approach for multi-reader studies, or, if you're specifically interested in CLIA LDT, then there would be an own section on publications of that. Or some people send us leadership resources or diversity equity resources, and they're currently sitting in between the various meetings rather than in one more centralized location.
I mean, I think it sounds reasonable. I don't know how many people, I've been sifting through the publications and kind of wishing there was a more thematic organization, but I think it sounds great. There's no harm in doing it at all.
I use it often, and I think it would be great to also increase our visibility, because you would probably forward that link to someone and say, hey, by the way, this is a great library. I think it would increase our, I don't know. I think it would give it a good boost.
So I think then, as highlighted here, if you have suggestions for themes or things that you always wanted to have centralized in one spot, this is the time to provide those. So feel free to put those in the chat, or if you want to email that to us independently, feel free to reach out to Ulla, myself, or the PyCC generic email, and then we see whether we can consolidate that into those sections. So basically, this is an option to give you themes for a resource that you always wanted but never had. And if, in case we can put it together, we will at least give it a try.
So I
All
just
right.
hopped over and
Yeah.
looked at the site for a little bit, and if you really want to build this out so it's useful, you're probably going to need some search functionality, which it doesn't look like is offered on the site now. And curating this is going to be a significant effort.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
make sure that you have those things covered, and if people want to submit things to go on the site, there's a good method for doing that. It appears at least that the publications is a fairly the layout looks like it takes a little bit of effort probably to set up. You have images as well as little blurbs and that sort of thing. So you want to be able to, you want to make sure you can handle that, and then allow it to be searchable if you have a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, the search function is of course dependent on the metadata related to the resources, but
I see there's a search box at the bottom. I
Yep.
didn't see it first.
Yep. Mhm.
But yeah, and you'll probably need to try to confine a search to the resources area if you really want to build that out and scale it.
Mhm. No, that's a great suggestion. Ed, you had raised your hand.
One other thought just to add to the list, Joe. We've had quite a lot of success through our stuff by where you've got any of these things that would be kind of an instruction for use type, a tool or whatever, putting very short, doesn't have to be professionally produced, but very short videos with them of how to can really actually generate a lot of interest. We've found, how many of us have tried to follow materials and methods in papers, and guess what? It's difficult. So we're pushing out a lot more instructional videos now. And if it's effort, yeah, but I think it pays back in time.
Yeah, I think some of the authors who submit papers are very interested. I think we have the so-called presentation section, which is dedicated, 1 hour sessions. I point, for example, to the page video where people featured their approach to the decision summary, etc. So I like the idea of instructional videos. So some people who submit papers have offered that they would be interested in giving sessions like that. So we could record that and then use it at a short condensed format, basically to allow people to feature their study. That's a great suggestion.
Great.
Other comments? This is great. All right, I think that
just a quick comment. This is
yeah.
This is Keith. Like, this is to me
Hey,
a bit
Keith.
like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and just being amazed by all the different options of things you can eat. But to manage any one of these responsibly, just like, to have a decent meal, you have to be very selective. So I was wondering if you'd think about maybe 1 or 2 topics that are really of core value to this group and try to do them well, as opposed to doing 6 or 8 or 15 different topics and just posting. I don't know, there's value in both, but I would just be careful. Would echo James' comment about just being a lot of work to do this right.
No, it's a good point. The hardest part is to acknowledge people's contribution to the community, but then not being over judgmental in, focusing one versus another over, because sometimes the value of a scientific contribution comes from the context rather than, the impact factor of the journal or the specific finding. So that's a harsh thing to execute, but I fully hear you. It's the most relevant papers to this community. We try to feature, but that's also a tough job. So sometimes it might be easier to have the relevant metadata available, the keywords, the buzzwords, and make them searchable. Yeah, we always also look for help in case someone wants to help select the things. Now that we have the information out before the main meeting, we also thought of obtaining some hits. We currently don't have that built out, what the most downloaded papers are, etc. But we're getting there. It's very, very complicated to maneuver all of it. But other comments from the group? Not, let's move on to Noor. Are you online?
Yes, I am, but my Wi-Fi has been a little bit spotty, but hopefully it'll be okay today. Hello, everyone. My name is Nora. I'm from MDRC, and I have a few MDRC updates for the community. Our threat modeling boot camps will be held on March 13th through the 17th, which is right around the corner. If you have any questions about threat modeling or are interested in learning more, please feel free to sign up for this round of boot camps. It's being held in collaboration with Adam Shostak of Shostak and Associates, and it is completely virtual. Next slide, please. MDRC also recently released a landscape report on medical device computational modeling and simulation. This has been in the works for a while now, so we were very proud that we were able to release it last month. And we are also hosting a webinar coming up on March 30th for the landscape report, more of an informational and educational webinar. This is a save the date flyer. We are still working on launching the registration page, so please keep an eye out on that if you have an interest in computational modeling and simulation. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Mary Ellen Damaris, will be moderating a panel on AI and ML for in vitro diagnostics at TRICon, which is being held in San Diego, March 6th through the 8th. If you're in the area or will be attending the conference, please feel free to join the panel discussion. Last month, the cybersecurity team at MDRC hosted a benchmarking webinar. It was very successful, and the recording is available online on YouTube if you're interested in going back and watching and learning more about benchmarking for the cybersecurity medical device industry. And MDRC is looking for volunteers in a few different sections within MDRC's work, one being digital health software. If you have an interest in digital health software or are looking to get more involved with MDRC, the next 3 slides will be more of an informative slide deck for you if you're interested in joining. This one is for specifically science of the patient input of post-market patient engagement, and this is a working group. And the last one is within just leadership engagement within MDRC. And as we announced last month, MDRC was able to release a landscape report of 5G in healthcare. And the report is now live on the MDRC website if you're interested in reading it. I believe that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you, Noor. And as you can tell, MDRC has been very active and continues to do cutting edge stuff. So fantastic. Next is professional societies and organizations. And I wanted to start with an update from our Friends of Cancer Research. They just released their 2022 scientific report, which is a phenomenal booklet of all their scientific accomplishments in terms of publications, projects, and summaries. If you haven't had a chance, it's beautiful, not only from a layout, but also from a content. They're really pushing forward. And yeah, if you're interested in seeing what a regulatory science-driven patient advocacy group looks like, definitely of interest. And as many of you know, Friends is currently also conducting a digital pathology initiative that is currently ongoing and reached an outline of a draft for publication. So definitely great progress on the Friends side. The next is 2 pointers to CAP. I think several of the CAP colleagues are on the call. I just quickly summarize, there is in April 15 through 18, a pathologist leadership summit, which is, I think, a hybrid event in DC. A lot of interesting components, meet with your legislation in person, There's several interesting sessions. If you have never been, it's a great meeting. Please feel free to register and or join. It's definitely an inspiring event. The second pointer to CAP, of course, CAP does many, many different things, but I just wanted to point to the so-called Laboratory Medical Direction Program. There's several subsections here. It's part of the ongoing curriculum and very many continuous medical education components of the college. Just as another pointer here, just looking at the curriculum is highly informative. So if you're in the laboratory industry, that might be a very interesting approach to just look at how CAP thinking about it and organizes the courses. I don't know if there are other things. I think I see Kevin on here. Sam is on. I don't know if there's other points from CAP. We can also leave that to the end for discussion. Quick pointer to the Association for Pathology Informatics. In May, there's the so-called Path Informatics Summit. Pittsburgh, great meeting, many different scientific and conversations. I believe there's also some scientific presentations from the FDA. Not specifically sure what day, but please take a look at the program. Definitely another important meeting. And then one additional pointer to the Digital Pathology Association. They have released recently their webinar archive as well as their past presentations archive. In addition to what you see here, the whole slide image repository, which is kind of a collection of data sets. And of course, there's already a pointer to the Visions Conference in October, which is a while until that is happening, but just thought a quick pointer here. As Keith has just suggested, the resources and publications are too long and we try to be highly selective. So here's the selection. Of the shared resources, one of the biggest and most impressive elements here is this so-called SERVCAN by the World Health Organization. It is a collection of global data that you can parse related to cancer incidence, prevalence across the different age groups, as well as some sophisticated statistics as a web searchable and interactive module. So that might be helpful. If you haven't seen it, please take a look. And then regarding the publications, I think we have a new hit list in this month. There were, I think, over 40 or so submitted, plus, I don't know, we can't keep up. But the three that I think are worth pointing to, one is more a basic and translational nature reviews in immunology about the immune barriers for specific or local site-specific metastasis. Second one is a interesting and important part for our trainees, that there's a lack of data about burnout intervention and burnout prevention in pathology training programs, including a meta review of the literature. So in case you want to know how to review heterogeneous sets of publications, this is a great scoping review. And then one world view, I think it's officially a comment by David Bates, is a brief one-pager about how to regulate evolving AI health algorithms. Well written, pointing towards, how to regulate this. And as we have pointed out previously, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023 included the predetermined change control plans for devices. In other words, that's already available from a legislative perspective. Of course, the guidance is pending. I haven't seen whether the draft has been released or not, so we're waiting for this, but the PCCP project is ready to go and would follow in line with this, how to regulate this. And as soon as the draft guidance comes out, that project will be able to tackle potential comments and or explore certain use cases. Of course, highly selected free studies, featurette of 40 studies that have been submitted. So please take a look until we are able to sort through this a bit better. A couple of other events, just as quick pointers. Next Monday, full day event is the FDA's Rare Disease Day. So February 27th. There is a workshop coming up early March by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in DC, entitled Incorporating Integrated Diagnostics into Precision Oncology. A collection of researchers will be presenting on the topic of how to integrate across disciplines for precision oncology. And then shortly thereafter, the USCAP meeting in March 11th to 16 in New Orleans, and then Molecular Tricon, also same, I think the Molecular Tricon is actually at the same dates as the National Academies of Sciences Conference. And then related to these meetings, an overview over the next PyCC meetings. So first, next Monday is a data breach project meeting number 2. Related to the DC meeting would be a meetup at the Lincoln Restaurant on March 7th, in case you are in DC for that meeting and have time. PyCC will meet just friends among each other, you know, for networking, etc. Friday, March 10th is a second Goldilocks project, which is a project trying to balance how to be and incentivize innovation while not providing additional risks. We have a pointer on the projects page of the PyCC website, and that's the second meeting. Sunday, March 12th, we have a meetup at USCAP that will happen in the Hilton New Orleans Riverside, which is the main convention center hotel. And there we just gonna meet at the main area and then just, you know, network and meet each other in person. And then 2 additional pointers. One is the 329 meeting, which is our next end of March steering committee meeting. So that would be the same as today. And then April 7th, a lot of people have asked. It took a while to organize because we wanted to ensure that we have some of the key stakeholders from Europe available as well. Would be the first HER2-low project meeting, which we anticipate to be of high interest because that issue is still not resolved, but definitely of interest to many. I believe that was the main part of what we wanted to share. And with that, I think we have some good time for other topics and or discussions, or if you have a good story to tell, please feel free.
Joe, where are you? You look like you're on vacation.
I am. I'm in the Dominican Republic.
Very nice. So
Very-
what are you doing working?
It's
Where
internet.
in the DR are you?
All the way in the northern tip, Las Galeras.
Oh, beautiful.
So that's dedication to keep the meeting going, even when you're on vacation. But your
Oh.
background did look suspiciously vacation-like.
Yeah. It's not, it's real. It's not a backdrop. I think I win the best background competition today. I hope. What else is new? Did I cover everything from CAP? I know Sam, you texted me something.
No, I just said I don't know that we have anything new to update. I mean, we're obviously involved in the Shield activities, and there are a lot of things going on in the DigPath space, but I would defer to Jim and Kevin and Mary if there's anything to bring up here.
Yeah, so I just added something to the chat for an upcoming webinar in the Digital and Computational Pathology Committee that's on March 22nd. So if you're interested in hearing what that committee's up to and what they're working on, there would be an opportunity there.
That would be great. Okay. I believe that's it. You know, if no other points are to be mentioned, I think we have our homework. And if you have time, please feel free to join next Monday, next project meeting, and then hopefully we can schedule a meeting with the key stakeholders to organize the in-person meeting. But I think it sounds like there's enough interest from the FDA to organize something like that. And I can probably connect with Jitesh and Noor to see where MDIC stands. And then I think we reach out to the key stakeholders from the various communities, and then we organize our in-person meeting.
And then we'll come and join you for a drink in half an hour. How about that?
Oh, please. It's very warm though. I don't know, but love it. All right. I go back to the ocean. Great seeing everyone.